There's a lie you tell yourself every single day, and it doesn't sound like a lie. It sounds smart, responsible, even mature. It whispers, "I'm just not ready yet." You believe it because it makes sense. You need more time, more preparation, more clarity before you can actually begin. But here's what you haven't noticed. This isn't caution. It's a negotiation you've been losing for years, because that voice, the one that sounds so rational, isn't protecting you from failure. It's protecting you from finding out whether you're actually as capable as you think you are. And as long as you stay not ready, you never have to face that test. You get to keep imagining, planning, consuming content that makes you feel like you're moving forward. But you're not moving. You're negotiating with two parts of yourself that will never agree. One part dreams, the other part protects. And while they argue, your life stays exactly the same. The truth is, you're not waiting for the right moment. You're waiting for a version of yourself that will never arrive. And every day you wait, something quieter happens. You stop trusting yourself. You've been here before, haven't you? Right now, you have a choice. Keep the fantasy alive, or stay and see what's actually keeping you stuck. If you're still here, it's because something I just said felt uncomfortably true. Good. That discomfort is the only honest thing you've felt in a while. Because the problem you're facing isn't what you think it is. It's not that you lack discipline, it's not that you're unmotivated. It's not even that you don't know what to do. The problem is structural. There are two parts of you in constant conflict. One part projects. It imagines, plans, and sees the future version of yourself clearly. The other part protects. It keeps you safe from risk, from rejection, from the irreversible consequences of actually trying. And here's what nobody tells you. The issue isn't that you don't act. It's that you're endlessly negotiating between these two parts, and neither one ever wins. So you stay stuck, not because you're weak, but because you've mistaken this internal war for wisdom. You think you're being careful, but you're actually avoiding the one thing that would end this cycle: reality, the test of whether you're actually capable of what you believe you are. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this mechanism works, and why it's been so invisible to you, but only if you're willing to see it. Stay with me. Let's name what's actually happening inside you. This isn't a discipline problem. It's a structural split you've been living with so long you think it's just who you are. There are two forces inside you constantly at war. The first one projects. It dreams. It plans. It imagines the person you could become with perfect clarity. It sees the business you could build, the body you could have, the life you could create. This part feels alive, energized, full of possibility. The second one protects. It scans for danger. It calculates risk. It reminds you of every time you failed before, every time someone rejected you, every irreversible mistake you could make if you moved too soon. This part doesn't feel like fear. It feels like intelligence. And here's the trap. You think the problem is that you don't act. But that's not it. The problem is that you're constantly negotiating between these two parts, and the negotiation never ends. The projector says, "Start now." The protector says, "Not yet. You're not ready." So you compromise. You research more. You plan more. You consume another video, another book, another course, and you call that progress. But it's not progress. It's a stalemate dressed up as preparation. This is why you can spend months, sometimes years, thinking about something without ever doing it. Not because you're lazy, but because your internal system has found a way to keep both parts satisfied without ever having to face reality. The projector gets to keep dreaming. The protector gets to keep you safe, and you stay exactly where you are. This is the conflict. And until you see it clearly, you'll keep mistaking it for something else. Here's the illusion you've been operating under. Thinking equals action. Planning equals progress. Consuming content equals transformation. It doesn't. But your brain has convinced you otherwise. Because here's what actually happens. When you watch a video about discipline, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. It feels like you're moving forward, like you're taking control. When you outline your plan for the 5th time, it feels productive, organized, like you're finally getting serious. When you imagine yourself 6 months from now, successful, confident, transformed, it feels real. But none of it is real. It's fantasy dressed up as preparation. And the reason this illusion is so powerful is because it serves a function. As long as you're thinking, you're still safe. As long as you're studying, you haven't failed yet. As long as you're consuming, you don't have to produce. Your imagination has become emotional anesthesia. Your theoretical clarity has become a substitute for lived experience. And the worst part? You know this. Deep down, you know that watching this video, right now, might just be another lap around the same cycle. Another hit of inspiration that fades by tomorrow. Another moment where you feel like you're doing something when really you're just thinking about doing something. This is the mechanism, and it's invisible because it feels so justified, so intelligent, so responsible. But here's the truth you don't want to hear. The very thing you're doing right now, seeking more clarity, more understanding, more insight, might be the exact thing keeping you stuck. Because clarity without action isn't wisdom. It's avoidance with better vocabulary. Let's take this out of your head for a moment. Because this isn't a moral problem. It's a physiological one. Your brain doesn't care about your goals. It doesn't care about your potential. It doesn't care about the person you want to become. Your brain has one job: keep you alive. And to your nervous system, alive means safe, not successful, not fulfilled, not transformed, safe. So when you think about doing the thing, sending the email, posting the video, having the conversation, starting the project, your body responds before your mind even finishes the thought. Your chest tightens, your breathing shallows. A wave of resistance floods through you that you can't quite name. And then the thoughts arrive to justify what your body already decided. Maybe tomorrow. I need to think about this more. I'm not ready yet. But those aren't decisions. They're rationalizations for a nervous system response. Avoidance isn't a character flaw, it's a learned survival pattern. At some point, maybe years ago, your brain linked action with danger, with judgment, with the possibility of being exposed as inadequate. And now every time you move toward that edge, your system pulls you back. Not because you're weak, but because you're wired to prioritize safety over growth. Here's what that means. Willpower won't fix this. Motivation won't override it. No amount of inspirational content will rewire a nervous system that's been trained to see action as threat. Your body is running the show, and until you understand that, you'll keep blaming yourself for something you were never consciously choosing. This changes everything, and the next layer is where most people turn away. Now let's talk about why you've been blaming yourself for all of this. Because the world handed you a story that was never true. Discipline is character. If you really wanted it, you'd just do it. Successful people don't make excuses, they make moves. You've heard these lines your entire life, and somewhere along the way, you internalized them. So when your nervous system freezes, when your body pulls you back from the edge, you don't see it as a physiological response. You see it as a moral failure. You think, I must not want it enough. You think, there's something wrong with me. You think, other people can do this. Why can't I? But here's the structural error nobody talks about. Culture treats nervous system responses as personality defects. It takes what is essentially a learned survival mechanism, avoidance, and reframes it as laziness, weakness, lack of ambition, and the consequence of that reframing is devastating, because now you're not just dealing with the original fear, you're also dealing with shame about the fear. You're stuck and you're ashamed of being stuck, and that shame becomes another layer of paralysis. This is why intelligent people feel the most broken, because they can see the gap. They know what they're capable of, they understand the logic, but they still can't move. And instead of recognizing that as a nervous system issue, they internalize it as identity. I'm the kind of person who starts things but never finishes. I'm all talk, no action. I'm not built for this. But none of that is true. You were just interpreting a biological response through a cultural lens that was designed to make you feel inadequate. And here's what nobody tells you. The fact that you see the gap, the fact that it bothers you, means you were never the problem. You were just operating inside a framework that mistook your wiring for your worth. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about seeing clearly for the first time. Let's talk about what inaction actually costs. Because you've been treating it like it's neutral, like waiting is just waiting. But it's not. Every day you don't act, something inside you changes. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, quietly, irreversibly. Your identity erodes. Not the one you project to other people, that one's still intact, but the one you hold privately, the one that exists in the space between what you say you'll do and what you actually do. That version of you is dying, because every time you break a promise to yourself, every time you say tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes, you're training yourself not to trust your own word. And once that trust is gone, everything becomes harder. Starting feels impossible because you don't believe you'll finish. Committing feels pointless because you don't believe you'll follow through. Trying feels humiliating because deep down, you've already decided you'll quit. This is the invisible cost. Not failure, not judgment, not even regret. It's the slow, silent erosion of self-respect. And the worst part, you can't see it happening. Because from the outside, your life looks fine, maybe even good. You're still functional, still capable, still intelligent, but inside there's a growing distance between who you are and who you know you could be. And that distance? It's not motivating, it's suffocating. Because potential doesn't wait. It doesn't sit patiently in storage until you're finally ready to use it. Time consumes it. Every month you don't act. The gap between where you are and where you could be doesn't stay the same. It widens. Not because you're getting worse, but because the world keeps moving and you're standing still. This is what inaction costs. Not your future, your present sense of self. And you've been paying that price for longer than you want to admit. What comes next will name the fear you've been avoiding. Here's the fear you've been dancing around. It's not failure. You've failed before. You survived it. The real fear, the one that keeps you frozen, is this. What if you try and discover you're not special? What if you give it everything, and it turns out you're just average? What if the potential you've been protecting all these years was never real to begin with? That's the terror. Because right now, as long as you don't try, you get to keep the fantasy alive. You get to tell yourself, I could do it if I really wanted to. I just haven't committed yet. When the time is right, I'll show everyone what I'm capable of. But the moment you actually try, the moment you put yourself to the test, that fantasy dies, and you're left with reality. Maybe you succeed, maybe you don't. But either way, the comforting story you've been telling yourself, the one where you're secretly capable of extraordinary things, gets replaced with something concrete, something measurable, something that can be judged, and that's unbearable. So you stay in the in-between, where potential is infinite because it's never tested, where you can be anything because you've never committed to being something. This is the prison, not lack of discipline, not lack of clarity. It's the need to protect your ego from the possibility that you're not as exceptional as you've convinced yourself you are. And the cruelest part? The longer you wait, the higher the stakes become. Because now it's not just about trying. It's about proving that all those years of waiting were worth it. That you weren't just afraid. That you really were building towards something. And the weight of that expectation makes starting feel impossible. So you wait longer, and the cycle tightens. Here's the truth you already know but won't admit. You have to choose. Fantasy or reality. The story or the test. You can't have both. This isn't about what to do. It's about how to relate to doing it. Because the shift you need isn't tactical. It's postural. You've been waiting for the day when action feels right. When motivation arrives. When you finally want it enough to move. But that day doesn't exist. Action without emotion is the skill you've never learned. Action without narrative is the discipline no one taught you. Action without turning yourself into a hero is the maturity most people never develop. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel inspired. You don't need to feel anything. You just need to move. And here's what nobody tells you about that. The first few times it will feel empty, mechanical, almost meaningless, because you've been conditioned to believe that real action comes with emotional weight, with conviction, with certainty. But it doesn't. Real action is quiet. It's showing up when you don't want to. It's doing the thing even though your body is screaming at you to stop. It's continuing without the reward of feeling transformed. This is discipline. Not a personality trait you either have or don't, but a continuous relationship with discomfort. A practice of moving forward while every part of you wants to retreat. And here's the part that will frustrate you. Your identity doesn't shift first. Consistency doesn't arrive before you begin. The feeling of being the kind of person who does this doesn't show up until after you've already done it 100 times. Identity is always downstream of action, never upstream. So stop waiting to become the person who can do it. You become that person by doing it before you're ready. Here's what that looks like in practice. 1 action. Right now. Not tomorrow. Not when you have more clarity. Not when the conditions are better. Now. It doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real. Send the message, post the thing, make the call, write the first sentence, not because you feel like it, but because waiting another day is a choice you're no longer willing to make. This is the shift, and it's the only one that matters. What comes next is where it all comes together. This is where it stops being theory, where the split inside you finally closes. Not through insight, not through understanding, through repetition. Integration happens when your body stops fighting what your mind decides, when your nervous system learns that action doesn't equal danger, when your identity starts to catch up with what you've already been doing. But let me be clear about what this actually looks like. It's not a transformation moment. There's no lightning bolt, no sudden clarity, no day where you wake up and everything feels different. Integration is slow. It's the accumulation of small acts of follow-through that your brain eventually stops interpreting as threats. It's doing the thing enough times that your system recalibrates, that the gap between intention and action starts to shrink, not because you became more disciplined, but because your body finally accepted that survival and growth can coexist. Here's what that means in practice. You won't feel ready when you start. You won't feel confident after the first few tries. You won't feel like a different person for weeks, maybe months, but something quieter will happen. You'll notice that starting gets slightly easier, that the resistance doesn't hit as hard, that the voice telling you to wait gets a little less convincing each time you ignore it. And eventually, not dramatically but undeniably, you'll realize something. You're not the person who thinks about doing things anymore. You're the person who does them, even when you don't want to, even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one's watching. That's integration, not the fantasy version of yourself you've been protecting, but the real one, the one built through action, not imagination. And here's the part no one tells you. That version of yourself is quieter, less glamorous, less heroic, but infinitely more trustworthy, because it's not based on potential. It's based on evidence. Evidence that you can make a promise to yourself and keep it. Evidence that you can feel resistance and move anyway. Evidence that you're not waiting anymore. This is who you become, not by deciding to change, but by acting before you're ready, over and over, until action becomes your identity. The final piece is next. So here we are, back where we started. The lie, I'm not ready yet. You've seen how it works now, how it justified everything, how it kept you safe while slowly eroding who you actually are. And now you know the truth. You were never supposed to be ready. Readiness is a story you told yourself to avoid the test. But now the lie doesn't work anymore, because you've seen the mechanism, you've seen the split, you've seen the cost, and you can't unsee it. So now you have a choice, not between action and inaction, between honesty and pretense. You can close this video and go back to negotiating with yourself, back to planning, back to waiting for the version of you that will never arrive. Or you can do the one thing that terrifies you most. Start. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready, not when it feels right. Now. One action. Small, real, irreversible. No drama, no performance, no story about transformation, just movement. Because clarity without action is just another loop, and you've been in that loop long enough. If this video described you, if you felt exposed, uncomfortable, seen, then this channel is for you, but only if you're willing to stop watching and start acting. Because the next video won't save you either. Neither will the one after that. The only thing that will is the thing you do after you close this. So do it, not because you're ready, but because waiting another day is a choice you're no longer willing to make.